For writing today, we are going to be working on our beginnings or our introductions. So your success criteria today, well, first let's get to your learning target. Your learning target is I can write an introduction that will grab my reader's attention. Your success criteria, our student picked a writing piece to create an introduction for. Your introduction is at least 1 sentence long, tells us why your topic matters, asks an interesting question, or is an interesting fact. And you just have to do one of those, okay? Is at the beginning of your writing. That's the other thing. Okay, so before we get into this, we need to create an introduction that grabs my reader's attention. So when I'm writing anything, I need to think about who is my audience. So I want you to pause the video real quick and think about who will be reading your writing. Hopefully you thought about it and you're like, I bet you it's going to be my teacher. Oops, that's black. I need some. It's going to be my teacher and my fellow students. So my classmates, okay? That's who's going to be reading it. Maybe my parents, maybe a couple other people, but that's really who's going to be reading the majority of my writing. And then how can I make them want to read it? You should be thinking about this throughout the entire writing process. You're trying to include interesting things to make somebody want to read it. Okay? So, to make your beginning special, you need to try telling your readers why it's important. You only need to do one of these things. You could also ask them an interesting question, ones that they cannot easily answer, okay? You need to tell them an interesting fact, okay? And again, you only need to do one, so let's look at some examples. So before I show you some examples, though, I am going to show you the writing piece I am talking about. So I'm going to be talking about my writing piece about the Goliath grouper. And you may be thinking to yourself, what in the world is that, Miss R? Well, I'll tell you. Okay, Goliath grouper. The Goliath grouper is a type of fish. Goliath groupers, cannot be owned because they became a protected species in 1993. It can weigh more than some people. Some have reached 800 pounds and over 8 feet long. There are rumors that these fish have swallowed people whole. They do eat large fish and animals they find in the water. They can eat such large things because they have a huge mouth. They live in large freshwater rivers and lakes. They also can live in saltwater, so they are also found in the ocean. And that's all I have right now. I haven't really written much of a beginning. I haven't written much of an ending, that's for sure. So now thinking about that, I'm going to look at some examples of possible introductions that may or may not be interesting, okay? So let's look at the first one. I got to think about what will my reader appreciate. The first one just says Goliath groupers are important. Are you going to want to read that? Maybe if you're interested in them, but if you're not, probably no. So I'm going to say that's not a good example, okay? Goliath groupers are important to our oceans. Right? It's not super awesome. It doesn't make me want to read it unless, again, I'm super interested. So I'm probably not going to do those two. And for this one, I'm trying to show that it's important for this example, okay? Imagine you're minding your own business, swimming in a lake, when all of a sudden you see a fish that is bigger swimming up to you. Well, that could be a Goliath grouper. That one sounds kind of interesting. I meant to put bigger than you. So it's kind of interesting. Goliath groupers are important because their presence often means a healthy habitat for other fish species. That one also seems kind of okay. So if I wanted to use, gonna go back to it real quick. If I wanted to do the first one, which is tell my reader why it's important, I could use the last two examples. Either would be okay. Like either would be a good, strong writing that grabs my reader's attention, okay? So now I'm going to move to the next one. And again, you only have to do one of these. So this one is talking about asking them interesting questions, okay? So let's see what some possible ones for that are. Do you like Goliath groupers? Now, right? You could just say no and move on. That's not going to grab anybody's attention, so bye, right? Do you know what a Goliath grouper is? Maybe, but if I know what it is, I'm going to be like, yeah, fish, and move on, right? So I'm going to say probably not. It could maybe work. Did you know Goliath groupers can live up to 37 years? That is a long time compared to your average goldfish. I think that one's actually really good. It grabs my attention. I kind of want to read a little bit more. Did you know, despite having teeth, Goliath groupers swallow their prey whole? I'm kind of interested, okay? So again, either of these two would be a good question for me to include as an introduction, okay? So I'm going to go back. I've talked about how to do the important one, and I showed you a couple examples. I showed you a couple examples of the interesting question. Now I need to look at interesting facts. And again, you're only going to do one of these, so you get to pick. I'm just going to do an interesting question, or I'm just going to tell them why it's important. Okay? So let's go to the last one. These are the facts. Goliath groupers are cool. That's not a fact. That's an opinion. And actually, I shouldn't have an opinion at all in my writing. So I'm going to say bye, because I'm doing informational writing, not opinion. Okay? I like Goliath groupers. Still kind of an opinion. It is a fact that I like them, but it's still kind of an opinion because you can tell that I think they're great. So I'm going to say probably not. Goliath groupers are fish. That's a fact. You cannot dispute that. That is a fact, right? But is it interesting? Nah, I'm bored. Goliath groupers can live up to 37 years. And if I wanted to, I could add, that's really long, right? Compared to a goldfish. So I think this one's kind of interesting. Goliath groupers swallow their prey whole instead of using their teeth to eat at prey. I think that one's super interesting too. So I think if I was going to do a fact, I would pick one of these two. Okay? So now what are you going to do? Well, you're getting to that point where you need to create your own. But before you create your own, I'm going to take you back to here. And again, you're only going to pick one of these. So you're either going to tell me why it's important, you're going to ask me a question, or you're going to create an interesting fact, okay? You're only going to do one. Once you're done with that, you are going to go into your writing and add it at the beginning. So I'm going to go, oh, here's my first one, right? I might need to make my box a little bit bigger depending on how much you've written, right? So I'm going to write it. Okay, and I think I want to do the one about them living 37 years. Did you know Goliath groupers can live up to 37 years? Question. That's a lot compared to your average goldfish. Okay? So I'm going to make it so you guys can see that all again once I'm... Okay. So now let's see how that sounds. Okay? The Goliath grouper. Did you know that Goliath groupers can live up to 37 years? That's a lot compared to your average goldfish. The Goliath grouper is a type of fish. Goliath groupers can't be owned because they became a protected species in 1993. Okay? So that sounds already more interesting. I kind of want to read it a little bit more. And that's why you guys are working on your beginnings today. So I'm going to take you back to our slide. Okay. So what are you going to do? Well, you need to pick one of your writing pieces, and you're going to create a strong introduction, okay? And you're going to do that by writing at least one sentence. Notice that mine was actually two, so I do have at least one sentence. And I either told why my topic was important, an interesting fact, or an interesting question or an interesting fact. And I chose the interesting question, so check, that one's done. And again, you only need one, you don't need all three. And then it needs to be at the beginning of your writing. Well, I just added that. Check, I am done. Okay? So you are going to do the same thing. If you need to, please take a screenshot of this so that way you can kind of check it off as you go. If you don't, that is fine. But make sure that you have included all of these things. It's at the beginning of your writing. It's at least one sentence long. It tells why it matters, an interesting fact, or an interesting question. Doesn't have to have all three. If you have any questions, please contact myself or Mr. Davis.